Hello friends, and welcome to our video lecture on topic A4.1 Evolution and Speciation. This is our additional higher level content. Guiding questions are here, but really we're just going to focus on speciation in this piece of the topic. Understandings are here if you want to pause the video and read them. Otherwise, let's look at our objectives. We are going to distinguish between allopatric and sympatric speciation, looking at some of the reproductive isolation modes so that sympatric speciation can occur. We're also going to define and describe adaptive radiation, talk about some barriers to interspecific between species hybridization. Those barriers can be either pre-zygotic or post-zygotic. We're also going to talk about how polyploidy can lead to very rapid speciation, especially in plants. Two kinds of polyploidy, auto and allo. Remember that speciation can be a consequence of evolution. Speciation is the formation of new species when original species split. There are two requirements for speciation to occur. The first one is reproductive isolation. We cannot have the two groups of organisms interbreeding, mixing their genetic material, because if they are sharing alleles, they all have the same alleles, they're going to stay the same species, right? The second requirement for speciation to occur is differential selection. This means that the environments that the groups of organisms are in are different enough for different mutations to be beneficial, which is going to lead to the evolution of different adaptations and therefore new species. There are two spaces where speciation can occur. We're going to look at allopatric speciation first. Allo means different and patric is homeland. This one makes a lot of sense and is the most common type of speciation. We have our group of organisms here. They're in the same spot. They are able to interbreed. And what happens is some geographical barrier pops up. Let's say that we've got a fault line shifts and we've got this canyon and a river. And now these two groups are geographically isolated. They are in different homelands. Different environments in these different homelands are going to lead to the accumulation of different traits. And over time, we're going to end up with new species. The other space where speciation can occur is sympatric. This is far less common. Sym means same, and they're in the same homeland, which should make it pretty easy for them to continue to interbreed. There are some pretty interesting modes of reproductive isolation required so that we can have a new species pop up in the same space where that original species was. We're going to look at two of those modes of reproductive isolation next. And our first example of this is behavioral separation. Groups do not interbreed because they have different behaviors. My favorite example of this are the birds of paradise. There are 45 different species living in Eastern Australia, Papua New Guinea, and Indonesia. They do not interbreed because they have different mating rituals. This male has to put on just the right dance to attract a female of its species. Females of different species are not attracted to the dance of this particular bird of paradise. These different behaviors, these mating rituals, prevent interbreeding. They do allow for reproductive isolation to occur, which means that speciation was able to occur. If you have not watched a video of especially this guy's mating ritual, so good. Highly recommend. Do a little YouTube search, birds of paradise mating dances. Another example of behavioral separation that allowed for sympatric speciation to occur are the feeding behaviors of these two species of cichlid fish. So these fish both live in the same lake in Tanzania, but because they feed in different locations, over time, different mutations were beneficial, and that led to speciation. This particular ecomorph is benthic. It prefers to feed in deeper waters. This one is littoral. It prefers to feed at the shore. Over time, adaptations that allowed for them to feed more effectively in those different environments, even though it's the same lake, led to speciation. And now we have these two different species of fish in the same lake. And our second mode of reproductive isolation that can allow for sympatric speciation to occur is temporal separation. Temp means time. And here we're looking at different times, different seasons for breeding. And if we're making babies at different times, we're not making babies together. One example are these two species of frog. This guy, the northern red-legged frog, makes babies, breeds January to March, whereas this guy, the foothills yellow-legged frog, doesn't breed until March to May. Because they are making babies at different times, they are not making babies together. Reproductive isolation has been achieved and speciation occurred. Another mode of speciation that has led to a huge amount of biodiversity here on Earth is adaptive radiation. Adaptations are traits that allow for organisms to be especially well suited for their environment. Their structures allow them to carry out functions really efficiently. That makes them well fed, they survive well, they make lots of babies, and so therefore they persist. Adaptive radiation is defined as this pattern of diversification. We've got species evolving from a common ancestor occupying a wide range of ecological niches. Remember that a niche is the habitat, the space where an organism lives, and also its role in the ecosystem. The most common example of adaptive radiation is the Darwin's finches. So we had this founder species, the original parent species, and on the Galapagos Islands, what happened was that there were some mutations that allowed for different organisms, different birds, to be able to take advantage of different food sources. Because there was less competition in those different food sources, they were able to eat a lot, be super healthy, and then have lots of babies who also had those traits that allowed them to take advantage of those particular resources. Over time, this led to, again, all these different species that feed in different ways. Therefore, they are occupying these different niches. What's interesting is that a lot of the processes that lead to speciation are also going to prevent interspecific hybridization. Inter is between. Specific, we're talking about species, hybrids, offspring born to different species, parents of different species. There are some barriers to this hybridization between species offspring, and one type of barrier is prezygotic. Remember that a zygote is a fertilized egg. Egg plus sperm makes zygote. We can actually prevent the formation of zygotes with some prezygotic barriers. In allopatric speciation, we talked about those geographical barriers. Perhaps that fault line opened up and now there's a canyon and there's no mating occurring, therefore no zygotes being produced. In sympatric speciation, we talked about both temporal and behavioral separation. This is also going to prevent mating, which prevents the formation of zygotes. Of course, sometimes hybrids are formed, sometimes because us humans make it happen. This is an example of a hybrid plant known as Fairchild's mule. Mr. Fairchild, back in the 1700s, crossed a carnation and sweet william. They're in the same genus, so pretty closely related, but different species. They were able to produce an offspring, Fairchild's mule. However, the offspring, the hybrid, is sterile. It wasn't able to reproduce itself. The only way to make Fairchild's mule is to cross more carnations and more sweet william plants. This is an example, this sterile hybrid offspring is an example of a post-zygotic barrier. Because the hybrid offspring itself is sterile, it cannot reproduce to make more hybrids. We're going to prevent this interspecific hybridization. Why do we call this plant a mule? Well, it's because of mules. So when we cross a horse and a donkey, we end up with a mule. Horses have 64 chromosomes in their diploid cells. Donkeys only have 62, which means that when a zygote is formed between eggs and sperm from a horse and a donkey, we're going to end up with a mule that has only 63 chromosomes. That odd number of chromosomes makes meiosis really difficult, and so almost always mules are going to be sterile. Therefore, it's a post-zygotic barrier. Those mules are not going to persist because they cannot make their own babies. We'd have to cross more horses and more donkeys to make more mules. We're going to look at one last mode of speciation in this lecture video, and that mode is polyploidy. You have heard this root ploid before, haploid and diploid. We're talking about the number of sets of chromosomes. Polyploid, we have many copies of the chromosomes. This can lead to rapid speciation, especially in plants. It's far less common in us animals just because the complexity is added by our sex chromosomes. In us humans, the X's and the Y's, having extra copies of those just makes it difficult for an embryo to be viable. There are some examples of polyploidy in us humans, though. We have talked about trisomy 21, Down syndrome. This technically is polyploidy. We have many copies of chromosome number 21. Having an extra copy of every chromosome or 2 extra copies of all the chromosomes is just not going to be viable for us animals, again, because of those sex chromosomes. However, in plants, it can lead to new species. One mode of polyploidy is autopolyploidy. Auto means self. And what can happen is that during synthesis, DNA replication, in interphase, a parent cell will double the amount of DNA, but then we have an error in meiosis. We don't have correct cell division. Cytokinesis doesn't occur the way that it's supposed to. And we're going to end up with some diploid gametes, diploid egg, and diploid sperm. And should this plant self-fertilize, 2n plus 2n ends up at 4n. 4n is tetraploid. Tetra means 4. And so now we have this zygote that has extra copies of all the chromosomes. It is tetraploid. And it, interestingly, in plants, is able to grow into a pretty hardy grown-up plant that will make gametes that are still going to be diploid. An example of speciation through autopolyploidy is the rock cress plant that grows in a lot of places of Europe. And you can see from the map that we have some plants that are tetraploid, the 4x. We have some plants that are only diploid, the 2x. Some scientists don't actually like to call these groups different species, even though technically they are, because they have their different chromosome numbers. But because outwardly their traits are so very similar, they compete with each other. Some botanists would say actually these are the same species. However, they can't really interbreed because the gametes of the tetraploid plant will be 2n. The gametes of the diploid plant will be haploid 1n, and that's going to lead to 3n hybrids, triploidy. This is actually super interesting because the plants will grow very, very well. Well, some pretty robust plants. But during meiosis, because we have an odd number of chromosomes, we're not going to have homologous pairs able to pair up because we don't have pairs, we have triplets. Meiosis doesn't occur. These triploid plants tend to be sterile. So technically different species because they cannot interbreed, but otherwise they compete and look pretty much the same. Auto means self and allo is different. Autopolyploidy, one plant has a mistake in meiosis, self-fertilizes, and we end up with a polyploid offspring. Allo is different. So here we're going to have different species hybridizing and leading to polyploid plants. One way that this can happen is we have these 2 different species of plants, 2 different species. Both of them have mistakes in meiosis. We end up with 2n gametes, diploid gametes. Let's say that this is the egg and this is the sperm. If they happen to fertilize each other, we're going to end up with a tetraploid hybrid plant. Another mode of allopolyploidy is the triploid bridge method. Let's say that we had one species of plant that had that error in meiosis. The other species, different species of plant, went through meiosis totally normally, and we ended up with a hybrid that was triploid. But should a gamete of this triploid plant meet another gamete, a normal haploid gamete from the second species, then we can end up back at tetraploid. two A's and a B, and another B from that normal haploid gamete can take us to tetraploid one more time. Another way that we can have allopolyploidy lead to speciation, let's say that we have totally normal gametes from two different species of plant. We're going to hybridize and we're going to end up with a homoploid. We have one A and one B, so kind of haploid, but not exactly haploid, but haploid from different genes. But should this guy go through meiosis and have an error in meiosis and keep A and B in its gametes? So now we kind of sort of have diploid, but not exactly. And then those self-fertilize, then we can go back to tetraploid one more time. One example of allopolyploidy that led to new species is the spotted lady's thumb plant here. This was hybridized through this two-step process. Super interesting polyploidy. And on that note, my friends, we have accomplished all of our objectives. We talked about allopatric speciation, different homeland. We talked about sympatric speciation, same homeland. We talked about behavioral and temporal separation that will allow for the reproductive isolation required for sympatric speciation. We talked about adaptive radiation, Darwin's finches being a prime example of that. Interspecific hybridization can be prevented by both prezygotic and postzygotic barriers. And then we talked about polyploidy through self-fertilization, and we can also have hybridization through different species. Lots of extra copies of chromosomes leads to some super interesting new species. Well done today, my friends.